The study involves researching the theft of the painting The Scream, created by Edward Munch in 1893. As Kat Esner describes the theft in the Smithsonian Magazine, the painting was stolen in 2004 from the Munch Museum in Oslo by two men who walked into the museum at 11 in the morning, and while the one was threatening with gunpoint the guards and keeping them on the floor, the other one seized the paintings. And I say plural because together with the famous painting The Scream, they also stole another painting, again by Edward Munch, called Madonna. Later in this essay, I will try to research the motives of the two thieves, but for now I will still stay with the facts. I must say, though, that since the same day the frames and glass were found, there was a general concern about the treatment of the precious paintings by the thieves, and also the fact that possibly because of their nervousness, they almost dropped one of the paintings on the way out of the museum. The latter enhances the thought that they might have been amateur thieves, but the first info described above suggests that the possibility of them being passionate art lovers was rather thin. The paintings were recovered 2 years later, and many believed that they were destroyed. However, they were not in bad shape, still damaged, no doubt, due to carelessness and neglect. The two men were identified and charged with the theft, a resolution that, yes, restored the paintings, but didn't help solve the mystery around why they had stolen the paintings in the first place. That, of course, for those interested in matters of that kind. Looking up for relevant legislation around art thefts that could also be attributed to the case I'm examining here, I find that FBI has, apart from a special art crime team of 20 special agents and DJO trial attorneys for prosecution, it has also created a national stolen art file where all stolen art and cultural properties can be found if reported, and can be used by any country to reinforce their state of law. Also, Dick Ellis, a former detective at the Met Police Scotland Yard, specialized in art crime, points out how much official organization lacks in the case of Europe around the subject. There is no special police department dealing with art thefts, but also with burglaries of antiques and cultural properties, plus laundering. Comparing Scotland Yard with FBI, he continues, he exclaims, the training of 400 men by FBI, while London is falling short, although there are news now of the specialized unit in the yard being reformed this year. Even though the organization of the Met unit is progressing rather slowly, there is a very intriguing story of how a Scotland Yard detective named Charlie Hill was able to recover another version of the Scream earlier in time. In 1994, the other version of the famous painting was stolen from the Norwegian National Gallery, and in quite a ridiculous manner, which brought the Norwegian government to an embarrassment. Maybe that is why they asked the help of Scotland Yard, and particularly Charlie Hill, to recover the famous piece. This story of how he achieved this has nothing to be jealous of from the stories of Detective Hercule Poirot, and can be listened in BBC. I leave the link at my references. As the story is getting more complicated and intriguing around the Scream, I will clear matters. there are 4 paintings by Edvard Munch, versions of the same subject, and where they are hanging as we speak, hopefully still, also as you read this essay. So the first one is in the National Gallery of Norway in Oslo. It was created in 1893 and it's an oil painting. The second one is in Munch Museum in Oslo, again created in 1893 and also an oil painting. Then now in a private collection sold by Sotheby's in 2013 for $120 million is a pastel version, and it was created in 1895. And the fourth one is in the Munch Museum in Oslo and is a pastel created in 1910. So I just want to mention here that finding out that the Munch Museum from where the painting was stolen in 2004 had also a second painting, another version of the Scream, intrigued some questions, and I decided to ask the museum itself. So I gave them a call and had a communication by email, which they haven't answered yet, unfortunately. So they only told me by phone that at the moment of the theft they had the one painting in display and the other one was in storage. So Munch made in 1895 also a lithograph from which many prints occurred, facilitating this way the idea of this painting was spread worldwide. Now the painting even has its own emoji and also made its way into pop culture and media. When the British Museum organized an overall exhibition of Munch's works, some interesting details came to light. In 1892, Munch made a charcoal and oil painting mixed in the one painting, from which then evolved perhaps the Scream. The Scream is not exactly depicting a person screaming, but the nature around him screaming, and that scream is transmitted through his face to the audience. Searching whether there is a legislation and laws specific for art thefts in the country of Norway specifically, I found one work concerning mostly archaeological and cultural properties of a historical and ethnological nature, and the laws established in the Scandinavian countries concerning the removal and export of such objects. You can see it in the reference. In another work, I read that in the countries where there is no provision in their laws for matters related to art theft, fraud law is applied, and further civil law, which allows ignorance, leaving a way out for art dealers and relevant associates claiming their innocence via ignorance mostly. Then it was almost hilarious to read in The Guardian an article by Gareth Harris, which he wrote in 2008, where he refers to a report in the art newspaper which suggests that Norwegian auction houses believe that the Edvard Munch painting raised in price after the theft at 2004 of the 2 paintings I mentioned in the beginning from the Munch Museum in Oslo. Studies of the organized crime in Norway show that it is very low. That leads this research to believe that the thieves of both times, at both times of the famous painting, were not connected with organized crime. Now, about their motives, only speculations can be made, but as I mentioned before, they were not art lovers either. The theft of the scream seems to have brought the focus of the museum towards issues of that nature. And in 2019, with the opportunity of a very large exhibition of Munch's works by the British Museum, they discovered that 34 works of Munch were missing. The museum reassured that those works will be retrieved, even if they are missing decades now. What had happened? Javier Pez gives us the story in his article for ArtNet News in 2019. The paintings belonged initially to a businessman called Rolf Stenersen, who in 1936 donated them to the city of Oslo. 15 years later, they decided together to allow the artworks to hang on the walls of the halls in a student dormitory complex called the Son Student Village as decoration with paintings from other Norwegian artists. But some students took quite a few paintings off the walls and in some cases replacing them with prints of Picasso and others, and especially in 1970 a big canvas which was hanging in the restaurant called History went missing. Fortunately, it is recovered now, but many others are not. The loan was terminated then, and the rest of the paintings, which now belong to the Munch Museum and are still missing. Question arises, could it be that Munch's work was not so recognized as it is now that allowed the decision to display the paintings in public rather unattended place? And the second question would be, what were the motives of the students? They loved a specific painting so much that they wanted to own it, or it was already known that Munch works were increasing in monetary value, and so they presented a good asset. In 2010, the works were transferred from the city collection to the Munch Museum, and the authorities there hope that someone will come out voluntarily and return the missing pieces, such as the keys, drawing, the girls on the bridge, and others. Thank you for listening to my presentation.